I am so thrilled to be here for another Deck Creator Live. Today it is with, Ruth from Emotional Kaleidoscope, the Introspection Deck, which is currently live on Kickstarter. Ruth has created this deck in tandem with some very talented artists, Stephanie Zagorski, Michael Watcher, and Giovanni de Benedetto. It's absolutely stunning. It's very, very cool concept. I'm really excited to chat more with Ruth about this. So I'm just waiting for her to pop on and then we can start our conversation. I love that Kickstarter allows this opportunity for artists to crowdfund their decks like this because it's very rare to have the capital to be able to launch something right off the bat. So it's really nice to have this opportunity. So we'll just give Ruth a few moments to pop on and then we can start chatting. Some more details about the deck I thought I would share as we're getting started. There's 90 cards total. They cover 3 levels of consciousness, pre-conscious and subconscious. So there's different layers of exploration. I believe the deck has 350 GSM in terms of weight, with I think there's a stretch goal upgrade to matte gold edging and matte finish cards, which is super exciting. So I'm just going to add Ruth here. There we go. Hey! So, hi Ruth, so good to see you.
Hi, so nice to see you, Jules. How's your day going so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. Yeah, we just had a brunch of
Nice.
waffles. My partner's the brunch king, so he always does something special on the weekends. And we just waffled up and
Nice.
got to eat them with the kids and everything. It was really fun. Yeah. How about
Oh,
you?
that's so cool. Yeah, not bad. I was really nervous today because I was like, we're doing a live. And even though I've done a few lives beforehand, I'm
Yeah.
still, with these pre-jitter nerves of like, we're doing a live. Make sure you get it right. I'm like, what are
I
you
have that
doing?
same anxiety, honestly. Like every time it's so fun, it's so wonderful, but then, you're up in front of people and it's a thing, right? So,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And then I'm
exactly.
always like, I need to be an expert. Be an expert on whatever it is you're doing. And I'm like, but
Oh,
I'm
I
not an
know.
expert, am I?
You're an expert in your deck, and that's all you need to be. I
Exactly,
have to keep reminding
exactly.
myself of that, right? Because it's like I set the bar so high for myself. If I need to know all the things there is to know about every single thing before I even begin to talk about it, and I'm like, no, I'm still learning. I can let people know that I'm learning and share my process along the way, and that has value too, right? It's that whole imposter syndrome thing, right? It's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
I know. Oh, you said a keyword right there, like the key words, imposter
Yeah,
syndrome. And that has been like the theme of
yeah,
myself throughout this whole deck journey, like this
yeah,
whole deck progression is
yeah.
learning how to tame the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no, it's
So
huge. It's a huge challenge.
it is.
I have a master's degree and I poured my heart and soul into doing it. My supervisor was lovely, but she was also very firm but fair. Like she held me to really
Mhm.
high standards. So if it was like pennyworthy, it was definitely okay. But even walking across the stage to pick up my diploma, I was so sure somebody was going to reach over and like tap me on the shoulder and be like, excuse me, you shouldn't be here. And I'm just like, it's so ridiculous. You put in all the work and all the
I
time and you create
know.
something that you can be proud of. And even then, it's like,
Yes.
who's gonna be tapping me on the shoulder here? Like
Oh,
ridiculous.
you said it. Seriously, you said it. That is like
Uh,
yeah. Anywho, I digress before we start off on that tone for the rest of for the rest of the live.
yeah, oh my gosh, but I'm so glad we were able to talk about that because it's one of those things that I think so many people experience. But I know for
Yes.
me, it's almost like this dirty little secret or this shameful thing that I can't really articulate because I need to hide it. But it's something that I think a lot of people experience and it's valuable to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
100%,
yeah,
100%, because it's the empowerment that you get knowing that you are just as human as somebody else, and
yeah.
because you have this newfound title
Hmm.
and or this newfound category that you now belong to,
Hmm.
people are like, oh, you must be a master at whatever it is that you're doing now.
Yep.
And I don't think I am. I am constantly learning and constantly failing,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to learn on the fly, because this is so very new to me. And
Mm-hmm.
just this whole deck journey for me
Mm-hmm.
has been so eye-opening, because I came from very limited experience in creating anything, really,
Mm-hmm.
because I never counted myself as a creative person ever, because I can't draw. I don't know how to draw.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my creativity was very, I guess, boxed in,
Yes.
because I thought that I couldn't draw. I don't know how to sing. I don't know how to do any of these things. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, I'm not creative. So I can't make any creative things. But here I am, created a deck,
Yeah.
and that's how she goes now.
How empowering is that too? Like, I mean, I do
So
consider myself a
empowering.
creative person in that I write a lot and I have past experience as an actor and all of that, but even that is very fraught with complexity of difficulty of experience and not really finding my footing or my place in that. And in terms of
Yeah.
drawing, I completely relate to that. Like, it's so hard because there's certain definitions that I feel like we set up for ourselves about what it means to be creative. But
Mm-hmm.
as human beings, we innately create every single day when we make food, when we do a little sketch on our notepad, when we do something at the beach with a stick and whatever, like there's so many different forms of creation. And I think it's really helpful to move past the kind of rigid box definitions that we kind of get
Yeah.
served in society, right? About what it means to be a creative person
Yes.
or have creativity in us. We all have creativity, right? It's innately ingrained with being human, I think.
Yes, definitely. And it's not just creativity is one form of mediumship. It's
Mm-hmm.
You can be creative through your words, through
Mm-hmm.
expression, through like body language,
Mm-hmm.
through anything and everything. It's how you look at things.
Yes.
But as you say, it's societal normalities or expectations as to how a creative person should show up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part where I'm like, oh, the imposter syndrome is kicking in now. I'm like, stop talking, you're not creative.
Well, after looking at this deck, I can vouch for the fact that you're wildly creative, and it's an amazing resource. And I spent some time again this morning reviewing the videos that you so generously included with the Kickstarter as well to get some insights, further insights on the deck. And I'm so impressed by everything that you put together. And I'd love to hear about, like you were saying that you don't consider yourself a creative person or creator necessarily. So what was your journey to get to create this deck, right? Because I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes things seem to come out of nowhere. It's like when I least expect it or something falls into place. And yeah, so I'd love to know what your journey with that was.
Definitely. So January 2021, so this year,
Mm-hmm.
I was with no job
Yeah.
and having issues with my visa and applying for permanent residency to stay in Canada.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Australia, however, have been living in Vancouver for nearly 3.5 years. So I was like, I need to do something with my education that I have attained
Mm-hmm.
in my. So I have a bachelor's degree in psychological science,
Mm-hmm.
with the aspirations to becoming a psychologist. However, that's just on a mini pause right now as I'm dealing with all the other variables.
Well, we're in a really unprecedented time right now, and I feel like
Exactly.
nothing is I don't know what the word is for it. Everything's out of whack. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
There isn't
Yeah.
really, it's hard to make sense of things right now. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
future goals, and because you just don't know what things are going to look like, right? So it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why I'm in the position that I'm in.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine back home was like, do something with what you have.
Yeah.
Like, you need to do something, create something. Don't waste another year, knowing that you just don't know where you're at right now. And because I can't study in Canada right now either, it was like, do something with your time.
Mm-hmm.
Be and make something of it. So I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
What do I make? What do I do? And I originally thought to make positive affirmation cards.
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time knew that that was too superficial for the range of depth that I wanted to dive into.
Yeah.
And that's not to discredit affirmation cards at all, but it was just for me, for my purpose and for what I intended to do. I just knew that that wasn't the mediumship that I wanted to play around with. So then around that time frame, there were decks like We're Not Really Strangers that started popping up, and it was all about questions and just diving deeper into that realm of conversations. So I was like, I'm going to make a deck of questions with a psychology-based undertone of how we approach our conversations and how we dive into these tricky conversations that we don't normally have on a day-to-day basis. And why don't we do that? Like, why do we reserve that particular time for certain occasions? Like, oh, don't talk about that. Like, you know, that they're not going to be happy about it. Or I wouldn't say that if I was you. Like, why are we continuing to cancel out particular topics because people just aren't ready or they just don't know how to? And yet I know that some of us actually want to have these conversations because we're just genuinely curious or genuinely wanting to learn about it from their point of view or from somebody else's point of view, because we learn through conversation. We create worlds through conversation.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to make a deck of questions. And I don't know about the artwork because I'm not artistic at all. So I was like, I'll just figure that out later on. So I initially had 150 questions and had to refine, rinse, and repeat to narrow it down. And then I think 90 to me sounded right because I would then go off the framework of Sigmund Freud's 3 levels of mind: conscious, pre-conscious, subconscious, thereby meaning that the deck would get progressively deeper as you dived into it and moved through the series itself. And I think it was, so I started off in January 2021. I had approached 3 artists in late April. So I was just sitting like on my bed with my partner and I was like, what do I do about this artwork, man? Like, you can't have a plain deck. Nobody wants to see plain cards. Like, how do I tie art and psychology together to make sense? Like, to have some true relevance and linkage to what I'm doing. So then it literally clicked. Like, I'm so ashamed at the fact that I'm a psychology undergrad and had not clicked about this ages ago and was like, flexography. I was like, Rorschach, ink blot. That's what we're doing. And it was just like cataclysmic in my mind. Like, that's what we're doing. We're doing this. We're doing the Rorschach ink blot style art because it has relevance to psychology and the undertone of the deck and the questions and the framework of Sigmund Freud. Like, we can tie this all together and that's how it's going. And it was going in my mind so fast that I literally got up and I was like, this is what we're doing. And then I showed my boyfriend and he was like, oh, cool. Like, what is that? And like, you know, he's like, what is going on? I'm like, have you never seen this before? Like, what do you see? I literally said, what do you see? And he's like, oh, I know this. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So then we start Googling, like, how should we do it? And I was like, maybe I'm just going to do it myself. Like, just splash a whole lot of like paints together and then take a picture and digitally, I guess, edit it so that it's a little bit more crisp. And there we go. And then I was like, am I going to really do 90 versions of this? People are going to take this seriously, like, oh, this looks like a child did it. This is just like paint splashed together, like sploshed together like this in like folded paper. And then I started doubting myself on that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And then my boyfriend reached out to a few collectography artists through Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool because I forget that these platforms are most definitely a form and resource of connection.
You.
So he did that on my behalf because I was way too shy back then, knowing that this is my first ever entrepreneurial project. So I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then he was like, I'll do it for you.
Oh,
So he messaged out. I know, and then he did that.
Yeah,
Exactly. So like he went and set that all up, and he was like, I need you to now reach out to them because I've done the initial phase and they said yes. So you need to follow up with them. Yeah. And then that's essentially what happened.
Oh, I love that.
We found three artists. I did a Zoom with all three of them.
Yeah.
And that was nerve-wracking as hell because what do I say to three artists that are already quite pronounced in their genre of art and in their work, because this is their life, and I say to them, hey, do you want to be a part of my deck of cards?
It's so amazing when you do that, though, and you step out of your comfort zone. Like, two of my really dear friends now are two astrologers in this area that this community, that's the word I was looking for. I'm only halfway through my coffee for the day, so I'm a little
that's okay.
They've now become very dear friends, and that all started, I purchased a reading from one of them for my birthday, and it was so wonderful, and he's just fabulous. And I just had this idea for a challenge, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do like an Astro Tarot challenge? Maybe we can start and do that. I think we started in August of 2020. But it was terrifying reaching out to them because I'd had a few conversations with Anthony, but Josh I hadn't even really talked to yet. But I just had this feeling, right? And so it was terrifying to send that first message and reach out and be like, do you want to do this with me? And they were up for it, and it ended up being the start of a beautiful friendship and a beautiful collaboration, and it restored my faith in what it means to work with other people in collaboration, because I had so many blocks around that from childhood, right? It's so powerful, but it's also so terrifying to take that first step. So I commend you for that, because it is huge, right? And you get these people that are experts in their field and they're so knowledgeable, and it's so terrifying to reach out as someone who's at the more beginning stages, right? But you never know where it's going to take you, and that's the exciting part, right? So it's lovely.
Exactly. And that is so well said, because if I was to encapsulate what had transpired, it is exactly that, is that me being such a beginner, stepping into this field with experts of what it is that they do, then trying to explain to them that I'm just creating something and I'm not too sure how it's going to go, but I know that it would be really nice to join forces with you.
Oh my goodness. And how wonderful that is, because then the project evolves and becomes something in collaboration with the three of you, because I've come to understand through that collaboration how powerful it is to bring different people with different perspectives who soul together, right? Like, it's like you have to have the same kind of approach or philosophy or belief system going into it, but there's so much that can come together in that, when you're in alignment with other people and you can create something together. Like, that's a powerhouse. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much power in that. And I love that you had that process. And I also noticed that each of the artists that you chose is doing a different aspect of conscious, preconscious, and subconscious. And I think that's so awesome. So how did you decide on that kind of breakdown of who was going to do what, or what was it like? What was that process like?
That was a little tricky at first, but I had already envisioned how each of their artwork would be, I guess, segmented throughout the deck. I think because I had looked on their Instagrams and their websites for so long before I like did the follow-up, I was fixated at this point after my partner had said, I already set it up, like you've just got to go and lock in a time to, you know, pitch to them what's happening. So I had already fine-combed through everything and was like, yes, I can see this as the conscious framework, I can see this as the pre-conscious, and then this as the subconscious. It was just a matter of letting them know what I saw in their work, but also being a little bit vague at first because I didn't want to, I guess, what's the word? Like, not like, I don't want to downgrade what they had done to say, oh, I think this is conscious worthy or this is pre-conscious worthy. I just initially asked them how they felt about the framework of the levels of being conscious, pre-conscious, and subconscious. And then once I had all three of them on, I kind of explained where I saw their work in terms of how I wanted it to progress throughout the deck. Yeah. So they were all very easygoing on that, which was so nice, because in my head I was like, oh, they're going to hate me because I said that. I think you should be here. And
that sounds like my brain, 100%.
Exactly. I was like, oh, why do I do this to myself? Why do I make it even more harder than it is? Like, why do I put up my own roadblocks to only take them down like moments later? So essentially that's what happened. Like, it was so easygoing, and everybody was like, oh yes, okay, yep, I'm down with that. Like, this is your project. Like, how do we come in and facilitate this vision? And I was like, oh wow, I've never really had anybody come in to consciously help me on anything really. And that's why I struggled so much with reaching out for help, because consciously I don't want to become a burden to people. So I'm got like, that was a bit of a tangent, but that's one of the questions in the deck in itself is me asking all of these pent up questions. So one of the questions was like, would you consciously reach out for help or wait for
I remember that one, because that's on the Kickstarter, right? Yeah, I saw that and I was like, guilty, so guilty. As someone who finds it really hard to ask for help or ask for anything, I 100% get that. Like, it's hard, right? And I used to think strength was never needing to ask anybody for anything and like being like a mountain in and of myself. And now I recognize that strength is vulnerability and putting yourself out there. But there's always that risk of failure and that risk that you're going to be let down or turned down or shamed in some way or whatever, right? It takes huge vulnerability to put yourself in that position. And I think when you're facilitating a project like that, because you're bringing all the written word in and you're having to organize what's going to go where, that's really hard, right? Because there's that management side of it where you need to figure out where things are going to go and how it's all going to go together. And like, you've got an idea of like the big picture, but then how is this all going to fit in? You know, like it's not easy. It's a huge challenge, you know, like it
is. And I didn't underestimate that aspect, but at the same time I did. I was like, it's gonna be relatively easy because I've done the questions, we've got the artwork, but then I was like, oh, I've got the questions and we've got the artwork. How do I do this? How do I now manage 3 conversations with 3 different people and try and make this as seamless as possible, because I don't want to stress them out, but I'm stressing myself out for not doing that. God, this imposter syndrome is seriously impossible to work with.
It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
It is.
Sure. But I have to say, from what I've seen of the deck, and all of the illustrations and everything, like it seems like there's a really beautiful flow in how everything comes together in terms of the art and the questions and just the sequencing, and the fact that each of the artists has their own distinct style, and yet it flows together really beautifully. Like there's a sense of cohesion and seamlessness in it that is really beautiful. So you definitely achieve that because it's unique, but there is that through line, which is, I think, what anybody creating a deck with multiple artists would look for, right? Because you want to have that sense of distinct layers of consciousness that you set up, but then also that sense of flow and that it all goes together, right? So that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And it most definitely is. I think the more that you look at the artwork per section, you can discern who is who, because they do have very distinctive styles. At first glance, you're like, oh wow, it's just a bunch of like colors. This is great. Like, what is that? And then when you start actually looking into it and start, I guess, magnifying what is what, who is who, that's when you start to really see, oh, we've entered another level, or we're moving into another level, or there's most definitely a shift in what's happening here, because it does, to me, in my opinion, it does get very deep as you go in. Like the artwork itself gets very deep. You start off with something so I guess not basic, but what is the word that I want to say? Because it's not basic, because I feel like that's rude.
Simpler approach, because you're going to do that with the questions, right? Like it starts with simpler questions, and then as you progress, from what I understand about the deck, you start simple and then you get more and more complex as time goes on, so, or as the journey through the cards goes on, so that you can start. I noticed, well, I watched the video that your friend had listed on the Kickstarter, and they were talking about how, you know, you start with the simpler questions, and then you keep going from there into deeper and deeper levels, and it's almost like you were able to engage and with this level of vulnerability and connection almost in spite of yourself. You know, if you've got lots of blocks up, it's like it gently eases you into this process of connection that is very gentle and very slow and very gradual, so it allows for an opening up that wouldn't happen necessarily if you started in the middle of the deck or the end of the deck, if that makes sense. That was my understanding from what they had shared in the video.
Most definitely. And you hit right, like the head on the nail of that one, because that's essentially what it is there is a level of emotional intelligence that is necessary to progress with this emotional journey, because I did beta testing in the very beginning. That extended to close friends, and then to more generalized friends, and then to just people that I thought would be a good fit to play this, to experience this, because, you know, I needed to see varying levels of different people and people that knew me, because I didn't want them to be biased and say, oh yeah, it's great, like we did it and we had a really good time, you did a good job. No, I needed somebody to give me critical feedback in terms of what worked and what didn't work. And it was interesting because I had various people play the questions, like play the whole set of questions, and record themselves if they were in a different country. So my friends in Australia recorded themselves, sent me the recording for me to watch, because I needed to know how people were engaging with the questions and responding, and I wanted to see the body language, most definitely. Because that to me was signifying if it was a vulnerable question, and how that manifested in the body. Because we tend to get very defensive or reactive when we are posed with a question that makes us so vulnerable. So yeah, it was nice to see, like, my best friend had played it and she had a good time doing so, and not like, yeah, this is fun, like we're having a party. No, it was like, wow, just to see that other side and not be so reserved and not be so, I guess, so on the defense all the time because so closed up. That was a good experience for her to have. And then I saw other people build resistance throughout because they were in a new relationship. So they didn't know each other to that degree that they needed to be comfortable. So they were most definitely uncomfortable. And you could see that, and you could see the resistance building through the answers because the answers got shorter and more concise. Whereas
I think it would be challenging to engage in this game with someone that you don't have a good level of trust with. Like, I could see it being really, really challenging in that case. Like, you would definitely need to, if you're working through some difficult things in terms of shadow work, like pace yourself, or that you have someone that you can talk to, therapist or whatever else, because I can see it bringing up some things. And so it would be really important to do the sequence of cards with someone who's really trusted and who you feel confident and comfortable with, because there is a level of vulnerability with it, right? Like, these are intimate questions, and it brings up a lot of introspection and a lot of things that could potentially be challenging, right? So like you said, emotional intelligence is really important going in, and also being with a trusted person, you know, that you feel really comfortable with. That was my perspective on it. That's
definitely it. And that's to set people up for success with engaging in this. You do need time as well, because it does call for time. Like, I would highly suggest not starting the deck if you've only got an hour. Not unless you were just doing the first 30 questions, because you just don't know how long somebody needs to express, to release, and to even formulate and convey their thoughts into conscious words, because people need time. And I think that's the issue with conversations nowadays, is that we're so pressed for time that we're like, what is the answer? Yes or no?
Quick fix.
How do you feel, good or not? You know, we're so on time about everything that we don't give enough time to people. We don't let people engage on their own time. We're just constantly in a rush or not interested enough to just fully sit down and immerse ourselves in conversation, and meaningful conversation at that.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important, and I think that's the test of a really good, strong relationship, is when you're willing to take the time for that other person and invest in them. And it's not like this rushed interaction. When you ask them, how are you? You genuinely wait and want to hear the response, because that's our thing, right? We walk down the street and like, hey, how are you? You never stop to hear the response, you know?
Yes.
Like, I don't know about you, but the older I get, I'm 42 now, and the older I get, the less time I have for small talk and surface level bullshit, for lack of a better word. Sorry. I'm such a sailor in my talk, like, so faulty language, but it's like I really have a hard time with surface socializing, and not like, when I meet someone, I mean, within reason, obviously, if it's, you know, appropriate, but when I connect with someone, I want to know them. Like, I don't want to know like surface things about the weather or whatever else. Like, I want to get to know them as a person and like engage on a deeper level. And I feel like in a lot of social situations, we're really not set up for that kind of connection. And it can be frustrating sometimes, because I really want to know you. I want to engage. I want to, you know, get past this surface. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? You know what I mean? Like, and it's partly what you wrote in the Kickstarter about our search for connection with people, especially in light of this pandemic, but just in general, you know, you end up whipping through your day and going through all these different things. And there's this frantic pace that we get into. It's almost like this hamster wheel of like progress and achievement. And you don't get that opportunity, or for me, give myself permission to stop long enough to engage. I've kind of been forced to, and now I can't quite help myself from doing that. You know, it's amazing how that works. But yeah, there's such magic in sitting with someone and being seen and seeing them for who they are. And I feel like Deck has a real potential to facilitate that level of connection. And I think that that's really powerful.
Definitely. I love how you just summarized that, because it's almost like you're in my head, so I don't want to say it again, but
please do. I think it's worth repeating. You know what I mean? Like, I homeschool my kids, and I often find, like, it takes repeating something a few times before it really registers. Do you know what I mean? And some things are just
Definitely.
that they need to be articulated many times. I always try and like sneak it in indirectly, maybe a few days later, so I'm not being like super obvious about the fact that we're repeating the same thing that we just did. But like, yeah.
No, that's so true though. Like the more you say it, the more it sinks in, and the more you become so consciously aware of what it is that has been said, and have you actually processed that in a manner that makes sense and that is to what that person was intending with saying.
Yeah.
And I think because I was always, so I had formulated all of the questions. These were just questions that I had wanted to ask people, but I, as an inquisitive person, always felt like that was rude because I was prying on their privacy. So I was like, that's probably not an appropriate question to ask about now. Maybe I won't ask that question just yet. I'll let 6 months fly by and then ask a whole bunch of questions because it's pent up now.
Questions and start pulling down.
I'm like, literally, I'm like, oh, so I have a question from 2020 about this.
Actually, do you mind if I fire more? I laugh because I can so see myself doing exactly the same thing. Oh my goodness.
Exactly, right? I'm like, but I have some follow-up questions to go with that question. Is this okay? Is this a good time?
Do you have time? Like an hour or two?
Seriously. And that's kind of like how I feel with this deck is like, do you have time? Because I have so much time and I want to ask you all these questions and I want to actually, you know, understand you as a person because like you say, we do it in passing. We have our conversations in passing so much. It's like, hey, how you going? Yep, just off you go. Yeah. How's work? Yeah, it's great. Yep, I'll see you later. Or we have 1 hour lunch breaks. And what are we talking about? What do you got for lunch? What did you do last night? What are your weekend plans? Like, boring. I'm sorry, but it's mundane.
Yesterday. Yeah, it looks like rain this weekend. You know, it's amazing how weather factors into everything too. Like it's
everything. I'm like, I am so sick of talking about the weather. I don't fully understand what precipitation does in this climate, so I would rather not talk about it, please. Anything but weather. So, you know, like, I'm going to just randomly pull a card from my deck right now, but like,
oh my god,
this is a point of conversation. Like, what do you see?
Yeah.
Like, what about these colors? How does that make you feel? And then you're like, oh shit, like, what is that? Like, what are you doing? You know, like, this time people are like, I don't know how to feel, but I'm loving the purple, or I'm loving like what I think I see.
Yes.
And people are like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a point of topic, or that opens up this next level curiosity of what's to come when you flip the card. So then you flip the card and the question belongs to the pre-conscious level.
Oh, amazing.
And then the question is, have you experienced a traumatic event that has shaped you into the person you are today? And you're like, yes.
Yeah, that's a lot of question. Like it would definitely take sitting down with somebody that you're really comfortable with, because I could see that bringing up a lot of stuff. Like I would be 100% comfortable sitting down with my partner and talking about that, or I've got a couple of close friends that I would be comfortable, you know, but it's like, it's even reinforcing that sense of intimacy with that person, because when you think to yourself, oh, this question is challenging me, who would I feel safe opening up to about? That's who I would choose to engage in these cards with. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's something so powerful in that, because it's easy to feel isolated right now, and it's easy to feel like all of my closest friends are at a distance from me, right? And it's great because we can keep up in ways that we never could, let's say 100 years ago or 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But like, it also fosters that sense of intimacy when you think about, okay, well, who do I really genuinely want to connect with? Like, we're not out and about doing things in the way that we used to so much. And so like, my husband's now working remotely, so he's not going in the office anymore. And that's a permanent thing for his company that's happened over COVID. But it's like, I feel like I always used to think, I don't know about you, this is a bit of a tangent, I apologize, but I always used to think that it was a numbers thing. Like, oh, I have to have lots of friends, right? And now I think, no, I only need my core people, and I can count them on a hand and a half. And that's great because I would rather invest so much of myself in a smaller number of relationships than all of myself scattered out to so many people. Do you know what I mean? Because you can't invest in anyone
Yes.
truly if it's all so spread out and scattered, right? Like it's, so there's power, I think, in looking at the questions that challenge you and thinking, who would I feel safe with this? Safe talking about this with, and then engaging with them and fostering a deeper level of intimacy within that relationship. Because, I mean, I've got a friend that I've known for 25 years. We met in grade 12, and I would be really curious to see what her answers would be for some of these questions.
Yeah,
You know, and like we talked about
exactly.
some really in-depth things over the years, but then there's, I love that in relationship, it's possible to know more about someone, even if you've known them for a really long time. Like my husband and I are coming up on the 20-year anniversary of our first date in December.
Oh, wow.
And I'd love to ask him some of these questions, you know, like
Yeah.
a few years ago, I figured out that he didn't like chili, and that was something new that I learned about him. I've been making chili for years, you know, and I also found out that he took cooking classes in elementary school after school, and I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
how did I not know this, you know? And it's like, you can do that in your day-to-day life, and those are kind of surface level things, but I love that this particular deck system allows for an even deeper level of intimacy, because a lot of the questions, like the one you just read, are very to the core of your experience as a human, you know, and the things that really
Exactly.
affect you on a deep core level, you know, and there's something really powerful in fostering that intimacy, that you would feel comfortable asking that to someone and then also having them return that to you, right? There's power
Most
in
definitely.
that.
Most definitely. And I think like it is how you say, like you can know somebody for so long and yet still learn something new about them.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of questions. It's a matter
Mm-hmm.
of, have you asked enough questions, and what type or what pedigree of questions do you normally engage in?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like, if you think of it, like you've got the core of a circle and
Yeah.
you know what's in that core. But
Mm-hmm.
then as you start going outwards,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more to it
Mm-hmm.
as you start exploring and delving into that area. Because even for myself, you know, these are questions that I probably would never ask myself as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it brings a lot out of you as it does
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. And that's where the intimacy is fostered, is because you're
Mm-hmm.
reciprocating that level of vulnerability, and
Mm-hmm.
you're giving each other that space and that time. And you're also enforcing the safety around that, because you
Yes.
now see this person and they now see you, and
Yeah.
you've come to this safe middle ground where
Mm-hmm.
nobody is wrong, nobody is right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing as well. The power of this deck is that it is entirely open to interpretation. There are
Mm-hmm.
no wrong or right answers here. There are no wrong or right interpretations of how you should see something. If
Mm-hmm.
you completely read the question differently in your mind and understood it differently from the
Mm-hmm.
person that you're engaging with, or the
Yeah.
people that you're engaging with through this deck, that is completely fine as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's something that within yourself as to how you read it that way,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to answer it and express it and release it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I love too that you have unique artwork on the backs of all of the cards, because that promotes the visceral response and pulls you into the meanings too. Like that's some of the power of art, I think, or the most powerful aspect of
Exactly.
art. It's open to interpretation. So two people can look at the same painting or hear the same song and take something completely different from it. And that's, I think, part of the
Yes,
power of that as a medium, is it allows you to enter these ideas and these feelings in different and unique ways, right?
exactly. I'll just quickly show you some though, but like, so
Oh
this
my
is
God.
the
Yeah.
conscious section, like,
Beautiful.
and then there's a difference where you start seeing that this is
Yep.
pre-conscious,
Yep.
and then pre-conscious is divided into the white and black.
Okay.
So
Yep.
there's going to be
Oh,
the one
beautiful.
artist that is covering white and black, because it
Yep.
does progress from white cards to
Mhm.
black cards. So
Oh, I was going to ask you
like
about that
the whole,
actually, because I know you mentioned
yeah.
white cards and black cards, and I was wondering if there was a sequence. That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Most definitely. And then this is the third
Oh,
artist. And
beautiful.
again,
That is
like they are
stunning.
all distinctive styles, yet
Mhm.
under the one category.
Yep.
So with the white and black, the purpose of that was conscious being the forefront, conscious being what you know. So therefore it's in white. It's not scary.
Yeah.
And then the black is the shadow work
Yeah.
as we get deeper into things. And that was the play on white and black, because I
Yeah.
also I couldn't just have an all black deck or an all white deck. And the artwork had a different significance when you put it on white versus black. And there was just a lot more depth when it came to the black. I was like, oh, I feel that differently.
Yeah.
This is intense.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's nice because there's 3 different sections, and going into it, you're conscious that there's 3 different sections. So if you're only prepared to work through the first section for now and then come back to it later, or, you know, have it facilitated by someone who can help you navigate some of that, I think that's really helpful. But I love that you've set it up into those 3 different categories, because it kind of prepares you for what you're going to engage with and as you work your way through the deck. That's really amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I have said it to people in previous that have the prototype decks or have engaged in the prototype decks, is that play it in the blocks of conscious or pre-conscious or subconscious if you need additional time. Like, pace yourself, because it is a very deep emotional journey that you're experiencing. And, you know, it's not to think of the other person, but it's also just to think of yourself at this point in time, because a lot of these questions will act as self-reflection at the same time as sharing and reciprocating the answering of that particular question. Like, it does have a deep effect on you as well. Some people that I have seen in the beta testing who probably weren't emotionally prepared or have that emotional intelligence to reciprocate with were drained, because they didn't know, I guess, themselves to a degree to be sharing that energy. Yeah. So it is like, you just need to be mindful of, like, if this starts getting heavy, like, take a break, get up, walk, get a snack, like, go outside. I don't know what it is that you need to do to ground yourself or reground yourself or recalibrate in a sense, but take a break, because if you can't commit to the full deck, you don't need to. There's only one rule with this deck, and that is to not interrupt the card holder. And that's it.
That's
you can freestyle the rest.
You can figure out what works best for you, whether it's independently working your way through with a journal and, you know, or working through it with someone who's trusted, or if even there's a group situation, because I know you mentioned that as an option too, where you can hold space for each other and, you know, create that kind of safe space. Yeah, because I think it would need to be a safe space, because there are very personal, very intimate questions for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. I imposed my deck on at a housewarming, and I was like, hello everybody that I don't know, I am going to we're all going to experience what emotional kaleidoscope is. And they were like, who are you and what is that? I was like, I created a deck called Emotional Kaleidoscope, and it's just the prototype, so there's only 30 questions. And they were like, I just came here to eat and leave. And I was like, no, you actually came here to be friends with me and everybody else. So we're doing this. And to some, like, it was challenging at first. And it was interesting to see, because like, I was best friends with the person hosting the housewarming, and then it was his friends, and then it was me and my partner and his friends. And then his friends didn't all know each other, so everybody was acquaintances to some degree, or had heard about a story of so-and-so, because you know, that's what happens when your circles start to collide.
Oh, for sure.
So we did it. We played the 30 questions, and it was so nice and interesting, and it was scary at first. Like, I could see people were scared. They were like, what? Who is this person? Who invited her?
Like, heavier questions, right? Especially not in like a lighter social situation. And I personally love that because it gives you a chance to really get to know who you're standing behind, right? It's not that dreaded weather question, like it's
Yeah,
a sense of
not
engagement.
that work question.
Yeah.
Exactly, not that work question either, because I
Yeah.
honestly don't care,
Yeah.
because I don't know anything about accounting, so I
Yeah.
don't want to get into it at all. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but like I have
Well,
good
and I
friends that
think,
are accountants too.
yeah, yeah, no, but I think too, like there's a sense that you're defined by the work you do. And
Mm,
like when I ask someone, like there's that usual question, like, what do you do? Well, I do many things.
mm,
I have many aspects to myself. Like I'm not defined by my work. So if I do ever ask that
yes.
question to anyone, which I tend to avoid anyway, well, I don't avoid it, but I try and rephrase it as like, what do you do for work? Or what do you do for your day job? Right? Because there's a sense that it's like, it's one and the same. Your identity is defined through your work. And I feel like it's good to kind of separate that because we're all multifaceted people, right? We all have different aspects of our lives. And so, and some people are very defined by their work and that's great, but I think that it's nice when you can look past that being the only identifying factor. And that's where questions that are looking for deeper levels of engagement can be super helpful, right? Because it allows someone to express themselves as a full aspect of who they are rather than one part of their lives, right?
Oh, exactly. Instead of like, when I hear people say I'm a mom, and I'm like, but you're more than that. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
were you before that? Like, what
Yeah,
do you do? Like,
yeah.
I don't understand how you can now just exclusively say you're
Mm-hmm.
just a mom. Like, you are more
Mm-hmm.
than that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just
Mm-hmm.
define yourself as this one category of person, because
Yeah.
you then limit yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you can see that, but you are subconsciously limiting yourself
Oh,
to
huge.
what you can do.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I've homeschooled my kids. My eldest is 13, and we started doing some preschool stuff when she was like 3 or 4. So I've been doing it for, 10 years, give or take. And for the longest time, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a homeschooling mom of 3. And then now when I tell people what I do, I open it up beyond that because that's one very important aspect of what I do with my life and who I am, but it's not the only thing. And it's nice to be able to look at yourself as this whole complete person rather than identifying in this small box of a definition that does describe some aspect of you, but it's not the whole part, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, exactly. Oh, anywho,
Yeah.
I was just like visualizing that one conversation I had when I had with that person, and I was like, "Excuse me, do you want to engage in this deck with me?
Yeah.
Because I think there is going to be some value here where you start to unravel yourself and
Mm-hmm.
unpack yourself as a person,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't just say that."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is blasphemy. You're not just a mother, all right? You're more than that, woman.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes there can be resistance to opening up past that, you know what I mean? Like there can be situations where someone identifies so closely with one aspect of their life that trying to push past that can be very challenging, right? Like it's really,
Yes.
yeah, it can be tricky sometimes, I think, because we do as humans self-identify in certain ways or have certain expectations about ourselves. And I think that's another way in which this deck is really useful too, is like pushing past that. You're looking at things
Yeah.
that come from earlier on in your experience, and that can kind of push you through to figure out, who am I now? Like, this is a reflection of who I was then, and how much am I carrying that forward into my definition of myself and my identity now, as opposed to something that was 10 years ago. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly growing and evolving, and the person I am today
Yes.
is very different than the person I was 5, 10, 15 years ago, let alone in my childhood, right? And yet I feel like there's certain people in your life that hang on to this idea that they have of you from long ago, and it can be really helpful to help yourself move past that, let alone that person, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Yes.
yeah.
100%. Like all of that in its entirety, because again, it's like it's evolution of thought and
Mm-hmm.
behavior and patterns of behavior. Like, are we breaking out of that? Are we cycle breaking what's
Mm-hmm.
happened to us? Are we cycle
Yeah.
breaking, the intergenerational trauma from our parents? Like, are we doing that? Are we consciously
Mm-hmm.
making those efforts to
Mm-hmm.
be different from that? Because
Mm-hmm.
what we know is comfortable. That's why
Mm-hmm.
it's our comfort zone. That's why we stick to it. That's why we we continue these bad habits or these unhealthy habits because we just know it. We just know what the outcome is going to be from that. Whereas when we do the shadow work, when we do any type of work in general that involves self-reflection, self-awareness, self-enlightenment, like that all breaks all of that. It brings a lot of things to light. And I think these cards, I have answered them so many times because I am the person that goes out and says, hey, come and engage with me through this deck. So I'm having to constantly answer these questions. And I find that the more that I'm faced with these questions, the deeper I actually allow myself to go into my conscious states of mind to answering it. Because at first I used to answer things a little superficial because I was like, I don't really know you that well, so I don't know how you're going to take this or perceive my answer. And I can see the uncomfortable body language elicited through these answers or these questions. But the more that I answer the questions, the deeper I go, and it serves me to do that, because I would only hinder my own progression and my own journey of self-development or personal development had I just stuck with the one answer. Because every time you're faced with something new comes to light, something else surfaces because you've already managed to unlock that memory. So now something else has come to light, something else will serve a relevance to that answer. So that has been such an interesting journey because of these questions, because I'm constantly faced with introspection. And not to say that I do it all day, every day, because that can get really intense. I don't know if I could do that.
Revisiting it, you know, for yourself, if it's just you and your journal and the cards, and going through that sequence and that series of introspection, like your answer is going to be different this year than it would be next year or 6 months ago, right? Because it's a constant unpacking of ideas. And going back to what you said about, you know, carrying things forward from intergenerational trauma or experience or patterns or whatever that you're inheriting from your parents, grandparents, ancestors, I think, you know, you either continue doing what's comfortable, and sometimes that can be not so functional, speaking from experience, or you make the conscious decision to break that pattern and move forward. But that breaking of that pattern can often be very, very challenging, and it can require a lot of work and a lot of rewiring of your expectations of yourself and others and how you want to move forward with your life. And I know for me, it took having kids to make that shift, because it took me focusing on something outside of myself to adjust how I was approaching these patterns and things that I had experienced. And it doesn't mean that you have to have kids to have that process, but usually there's a shift that happens that instigates that change, and it requires a lot from you, speaking from experience, you know, like it's a process that can often like rip you apart, and then you have to build yourself back up again. It's that tower moment, right? But there's such power and strength in that process, right? And yeah, I feel like the deck would be a really great tool for engaging in some of that work. And like you said, also very importantly, you can pace yourself, right? So if there's only a certain amount that you're ready or prepared to engage with at this point in time, you can slowly build over time and revisit, and then kind of, I almost see it as like the building blocks, right? Like you set your foundation and then you start growing from there, right? And you can finish it in 6 months, you can finish it in 6 weeks, you can finish it in 6 days. It's all up to you and what kind of pace you feel prepared to engage with, right?
Exactly. And it comes down to the fact that there's only just one real rule in this deck, and that is don't interrupt the card holder. Like everything else is up to freestyle to however you feel comfortable doing, because it's almost like these are therapeutic conversations at the end of the day. And I feel like it sucks when you don't have the right people around you to have these kinds of conversation, because I feel like if we were all equipped with the right tools and resources, we would be able to be there for each other and genuinely hold space and create space and time for people without feeling like a burden. Like, how many times have I heard that from my friends, or even in passing, like, oh, I don't want to be a burden, so I don't want to talk to you about this, or like, it's okay, I'll just figure it out. No, like, I'm here to help you figure it out. Like, I know that, full disclaimer, I'm not a therapist or a counselor or a licensed registered psychologist, but I do have personal experience. I have faced my own adversity and diversities of life and hardships. And maybe what I've done or what I've conquered and come out from might help you as well. But it's about relating. It's about understanding the reciprocity of that. You know, like, I'm here to be vulnerable with you because I know how it feels.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Going to see a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor may not be within your health insurance benefits, or it might be costly, or you might live out rural, or you might have limited resources or people that can offer these services to you. So if we were able to just do that, like, as human beings, just be there for one another and provide therapeutic conversations, how much less of mental health illnesses or even stigmas would exist.
There's still so much stigma around mental health, and it breaks my heart. I know many people who struggle with it, and I think one of the most heartbreaking aspects of it is the shame that comes with identifying as someone who has a mental health issue. You know, I mean, if you broke your arm, you would go see a doctor and you would get it set. But if you have something that is going on for you psychologically, there's still so much stigma associated with that. You know, I have a close family member who was diagnosed bipolar a few years ago, and another family member who was in denial about that for a very, very long time. And that impacted the first person's ability to seek treatment that made sense for them because of that. And it's heartbreaking to me because, like I said, if it was a physical ailment, then you wouldn't question getting it taken care of. Do you know what I mean? Holding space for that person to heal and to recover, because it is a process. And like you said, getting mental health support is very hard to access in many cases, and because of the shame and stigma associated with it, I think a lot of people also have mental blocks around reaching out for that care because they're worried about the judgment of others in their circle or who they're with or whatever else, and it can be very, very difficult. So having tools that you can use that will help you access some of these resources on a very basic level is, I think, really important, and having safe people in your environment that you can open up to about these things and who will hold space and speak from their own experience, not as a licensed professional or an expert, but as someone who has dealt with their own stuff, and then have empathy and compassion and hold space for you on a very basic level. I mean, that's worth a lot. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. Exactly. And I think that's what I want with this deck. Just to be seen as a tool or a resource, not to be the end all, like the be all and end all, like, because I know it's not that. But I do know that when you're able to learn how to hold these types of conversations, everybody wins.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
and it helps you, I think, develop those skills of emotional intelligence you were talking about before, because you know, we go to school and we learn how to do our numbers and how to read and write, but there isn't a lot of focus on emotional intelligence, at least not in my experience, for sure. And I think those are really important life skills. And the more we can hone those skills as adults, the more we can pass those skills along to the younger people in our lives and help them attain that at a younger age. Do you know what I mean? Because that's something that, I mean, I'll talk to my kids about certain things sometimes in terms of reacting when their sibling does something that they don't like or whatever else. And I say to them, like, this is emotional intelligence stuff. Like, this is stuff that it's hard for adults to deal with. I'm asking a lot of you and asking you to respond in a different way, but there's a reason for it, right? And it comes down to basic consideration. And I want you to help facilitate the relationships in your life and support each other and, you know, work on that baseline of respect. And if we can come back to that, it changes everything, you know?
It does completely. I agree with you on that, because you know, we grow up with these misleading, not role models, but like people that we look up to and how they react to things, and like we mirror that as children. We take that on completely, and then we grow up with these unhealthy or unbeneficial traits or patterns of behavior, or just like reactions to things, and we're so responsive like that, you know, and then you realize that it's actually not healthy, or you realize that you are actually lacking in emotional intelligence because you don't know how to convey that hurt appropriately. So you project. So you learn to yell, you learn to be violent, you learn to be reactive and explosive, than to just sit with yourself and understand what this emotion actually means, or, you know, to read between the lines of like, why did that person actually do that? Why did they actually say that? Did they mean it? Like, is this all me and my ego saying, let's be responsive and reactive to what's happening? And it comes down to like, some of the questions in this deck as well pertain to the inner child. And I think as we grow up, we don't exactly know what the inner child is. Some of us don't. And I think a lot of the people that did the beta testing, like a lot of my friends that did the beta testing that were in their early 20s, didn't fully understand what the inner child was. So they had a hard time trying to identify how to answer those questions. And it led them to learn more about the inner child, and that in itself is learning about yourself. So, you know, it prompts the educational aspect of what is this about yourself that you don't understand? Like, maybe when you fully understand what that particular aspect is, you'll be able to identify so much more about yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, inner child work is really powerful because we have these aspects of ourselves that when we start going out in the world and adulting, we kind of hide them away, as you know, and they can be also oftentimes, for me, from my own experience, aspects of myself that are vulnerable, aspects of myself that I feel like I need to hide away to keep safe. Do you know what I mean? But the more you can kind of open that up for yourself, and even just re-engaging with my sense of play and my sense of fun, like I lost that somewhere along the way, and that's a big focus for me right now, is trying to regain and reclaim that aspect of myself, right? But any tool that you can find that helps you access that is, I think, really powerful. You know, it's important, and it's really important work, whether it's for yourself or for someone in your life. It's great to be able to facilitate that kind of growth and development.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, and I say that fully aware that I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or anyone trained in mental health, but you know, in the reality of the situation where some of those resources are not available to everyone, it's good to have some tools that you can use and you can implement that help you with that, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. And like I say, it's not the be all end all tool, but it is something to help. It's just something that's there, and it's you know, like, whether or not you see it that way, completely up to you. Whether or not you want to use it in that manner, completely up to you again. I found that it has opened up areas to people that were too scared to just say it in general. And like, I played it with my partner's sisters, and they're all younger than me. Like, I'm 31 and they're all in their very early 20s. So it's eye-opening for them, you know, to see that, oh wow, like, she's so open about everything. And I'm like, I am though. And it benefits them to see that it's okay to be like this. It's okay to be vulnerable, because nobody is going to use that against me, because I can't even use it against myself, because I'm fully okay with that. And that's why I get to express it the way that I do, because I'm comfortable in saying these deep things, these deep truths, these deep-seated beliefs about myself out in the open. And I played it with my partner and his mom. So it was very different to see. It was, because, like, you know, it's a generational gap as well. And it's those gaps that have the varying stigmas or the varying undertones of perception, as well as, you know, back then you were taught not to be vulnerable. Like, don't be vulnerable, keep it to yourself, suppress. And now we're in this new wave of thought of like, our emotional and mental well-being is at the forefront. So let's keep it at the forefront. Let's be cognizant of our behaviors and how we talk about ourselves and how we talk about other people.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to, utilize these cards with my partner and his mom and me, and just see like the levels of vulnerability, because, I could see she was trying, and I could see that she wanted to do that. And she was very reserved at first. She was like, I don't want to do this because I don't think I'm going to have a good time. And then post 30 questions, she was like, wow, that was really interesting. I didn't think that I would enjoy that. But, you get to say these things that are so close to the chest. You get to let them be. And that's exactly what happened. And I was like, oh, this is the best.
Yeah, and it facilitates intimacy because you're creating a safe space for someone to be able to be open and be fully themselves. And that's really powerful, back to what we were saying about holding space and being present like that. That's a huge gift to be able to give someone, and I won't say all it requires is your time and your space. Like huge. That's worth more than anything else, but it's such a huge gift when you can do that for someone, right? Just like it's really quite amazing. Yeah. So before I forget, I just wanted to come back and talk about some of the specs for the deck. So in terms of like the size of the cards, I think I wrote down a few notes here. It's 350 GSM, which is such an awesome weight for cards, like my favorite. And then I think you've achieved a stretch goal now for the matte gold edging and matte finish for the cards, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting. That's going to look amazing. Oh my goodness.
I know. I'm so excited about that because I had originally with my prototype decks. So I got 2 prototype decks done because I wanted to see the difference of printing as well as what just comparisons of everything really. So I initially did 2 gloss decks. And as much as I thought I liked gloss, I've kind of overgrown gloss. And I don't know. I don't think gloss is my favorite anymore. And then I reached out to a new printing manufacturer, and they sent me a couple of samples, like various samples at that. And I have now fallen in love with matte, with soft laminate finish.
Oh, yeah, that's the best combo, honestly. It's so lovely. Like just the depth. Like I love all different types of cards, I won't lie. Like, and some bring out artwork in different ways. So for some, the glossy is absolutely perfect and it's wonderful, and like there's a nice slip for those cards. But my personal favorite, I just love the matte, right? Just the texture of it and the weight and the feel and everything. It's really, really good. Yeah.
Exactly. Even the sound, I'm like, oh, just like, whoa, do it again. Like shuffle that deck again.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
But yeah, so like, if we didn't reach the stretch goals, they would have come out in just like gloss, 350 GSM with plain edging. The box itself would have been in, I believe, gloss and just as is. However, because we are unlocking stretch goals, yay, we get to go matte with matte gold edging, and hopefully we can bring up the next stretch goal of going into soft laminate and getting gold foil stamping on the question side. It won't be the full question that is in gold, but it will have a border, a gold foil border, and then the level will be in gold foil stamping as well.
That sounds lovely.
And so I'm excited to try and reach that. I think I've got like 13 days left.
Yeah, what's the last day of the campaign?
I honestly don't know why I didn't choose October 31st as the final day.
Yeah.
I was like, let's do it in 30 days. Like, instead of just, capitalizing on the fact that there's 31 days this month, I was like, October 30th is the last day. Like, we don't need a day longer. Kind of regret doing that.
But there's also a lot of pressure around Halloween and Samhain, right? So that that means that you're capping it off, just before, so people can do it in anticipation of the celebration. you know, so that's
Exactly. And that's kind of what I thought too. I was like, look, I'm going to be a little bit superstitious around this 31st date, just in case it swings
yeah,
the other way for me and not in my favor.
yeah,
And also because I was like, I'm pretty sure I can do this in 30 days, guys. Like,
yeah,
this is the thing that I'm going to achieve in 30
yeah.
days. And
Well, it was
that
fully
was,
funded pretty quickly too. Like, did I see 48 hours?
yeah, yeah.
That's amazing.
So
So
that
great.
was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
That took a lot of work. I think
yeah.
when you do a Kickstarter,
Hmm.
a lot of effort that goes into it if you don't swing off as high as some of
Yeah.
the other Kickstarters that I've seen. And especially because I had issues around how I felt with my Kickstarter. First of all, I'm not a part of the divination community. My
Hmm.
deck doesn't fall under that category. So I was like, where do I belong? Where does my deck belong, guys? So I didn't know what audience was my target. I honestly didn't know. And because I had done some A/B testing
Hmm.
to see where I fell, and the psychology and philosophy community wasn't
Hmm.
very, very there for it. They were like, "Oh, this is interesting, but I don't really know," because a lot of psychologists are like, "We like tried and true,
Yeah.
like true tested
Hmm.
products that have yielded X amount of results."
Hmm.
So, and mine isn't tried and true. It's tried and true amongst the beta testing that I did. And I know that it works. So I couldn't really
Hmm.
appeal to just psychology and philosophy. And then I've always had a love for tarot cards. So I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to try and see how this can be integrated
Hmm.
in the divination community, because I like to say that I'm a witch as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love, I love all of that. I'm like, I
Yeah.
am openly about that too. So I was like, I'm going to try and appeal to this community and see how it would fare and integrate with these types of cards.
Hmm.
And surely enough, people were receptive to it. And I was like, yes, this is amazing, cool.
Yeah.
So then I started looking up, Kickstarters in the tarot
Hmm.
division, and oh my goodness, like 50K in one day, $1 million like in 30 days. I'm like, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I can be one of those people that falls under the lucky stars of getting like X amount of money. And
Hmm.
unfortunately not. I was so
It's hard.
naive and think
It's really
it
hard,
is.
and it's hard to know which decks are going to fly off the shelf, or, well, metaphorical Kickstarter shelves, and which are
Yeah.
going to be slower paced. Like, I have amazingly gifted friends who have released decks that weren't funded, which blows my mind because they're so
Mm,
incredible. And then there's others that, for whatever reason, have just blown up, like completely blown up, like way
yeah,
past anybody's expectations. And it's so hard to know which way it's going to go, right? And I don't believe it has
exactly.
anything to do with the skill of the artist or the quality of the deck or anything. It's such a crapshoot, right? Like, you really don't know.
Yeah,
Part of it, I really
exactly.
don't know what elements contribute to that. But even getting funded though within 48 hours is huge. Like, that is a huge achievement. It's
Yeah,
wonderful, and I'm so happy for you. That's
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. And I think like when I come back down to reality from it all is like, wow, you did that.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
you started this project in January 2021 and it's now October, so 10
Hmm.
months has elapsed.
Yeah.
Like I was originally supposed to launch the Kickstarter in September, but I had this intuitive feeling like this is
Mm-hmm.
not the time to be doing it.
Yeah,
I don't feel ready.
yeah.
I feel like there's a lot more that I can do right now. And so I waited till October to launch.
Mhm.
And it's unreal to know that people show up for you
Yes.
in ways that you honestly cannot imagine, because a lot of the people that did show up for me are people that I have fostered relationships through Instagram.
Mhm.
Like the majority of them were
Yeah,
people that I've met and connected through Instagram. Like these are my people, and these
yeah.
are people that I've fostered, relationships, friendships with. And it's like, it's so eye-opening to know that this new dynamic of connection is actually so strong and so real.
Yes.
And I don't take it for granted at all, because I have so much love and support for the people that showed up for me. Because to think that 200 people, I think I'm nearly at like 200 backers now, but to think that 200 people showed up for my project is such a surreal feeling. Like, what the hell? Like, I don't even have that many friends. And you all came through and purchased something of mine that I like, this passion project, knowing that it's my first ever entrepreneurial project at that. And you all believed in it. And it's unreal. Unreal.
No, it's
I love
huge.
that.
I mean, this community has gotten me through COVID, honestly. Like, it's amazing, the connections that I've made here, the people that I've gotten to know, the amazingly talented deck creators like yourself. Like, I just feel so honored to be able to share space with so many incredible people. And it really, like, I started my account in end of November 2019. That was my coming out of the tarot closet, I guess, if I can say that. It was something that I kind of kept very hidden prior to that, and then I just gave myself permission. But the community that I found here through starting up that account and engaging with people has just been incredible, and I feel so grateful to have it. And there's all kinds of issues with Instagram and visibility and whatever else, but I am so grateful for it as a platform, because it's allowed me to connect with people and forge real, lasting, genuine friendships. Like, who knew that social media had that potential? I certainly didn't. Up until then, I was like, oh, whatever, you know. But it really is special, and it's incredible when you can launch something like that and see that tangible support behind you. I mean, that's huge, and it's wonderful.
It is.
So great.
It is. No, I agree.
Great. My
I agree.
friend just came and dropped off my laptop. He's
great.
playing Minecraft with one of his friends, who's actually the son of a friend of mine that I met when I was 19, and her kids are close in age to my kids. Despite the fact that they're in Calgary, they're now fast friends, so that's kind of exciting. So.
That's cool. That's cool. That's nice. Like, that circle still goes. That circle still lives. So.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really, I'm still in shock that we're, you know, it's like those friendships where you don't necessarily stay in touch all the time, but then when you do get in touch every 6 months, it's like you just talked the week before. Like, there's so much power in that, and I'm so grateful for it, you know. Like, it can sometimes feel like out of sight, out of mind, but then there's these really lasting bonds that you have with people that somehow endure the test of life getting in the way sometimes, you know. It's
exactly. I love those relationships, because ego doesn't affect the whole, well, you're not spending this amount of time with me, you didn't give me this amount of attention, you didn't like this on Instagram or Facebook or wherever it was posted.
Outside of social media.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm sorry, but what? Like, are we not friends nevertheless? All of those external variables. So no, I love those kind of relationships. They mean a lot to me. And and again, like, the support that I've received has been overwhelming, and it's crazy. Like, it's so crazy. And I had a mini reflection about what has happened, because I think I've been so tunnel vision with just striving towards this goal. And I'm like, I had this mini reflection where I was nearly crying. I felt that shake in my voice, and it was just acknowledging, like, myself and what I've done, and knowing that I stepped out of all of these comfort zones, that I did things that I never ever thought that I would be doing something like this and consciously reaching out. Like, the amount, like, this has taught me through rejection, it has taught me that it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like you. It just means that they're not aligned with what you're doing. So it's okay. Find somebody else, because there's somebody else out there that is aligned with what you're doing and your mission or your cause. And you're going to find them. It's just, you got to reach out. You got to reach out to 100 people to find some golden, like, 2 people out of that. And I did. I found some very golden people throughout this whole process. And I was like, holy moly.
Yeah.
how does this happen? How does this
Yeah.
happen in this lifetime?
Oh, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I always think of Ellen Montgomery when I think about that because, and I used to think that if this one person didn't like what I did or didn't support what I did, then it meant it was a failure. And now I realize that maybe it's just that that person isn't the right person for me to connect with regarding that specific thing, or maybe even in general. But I always think of Ellen Montgomery because I think she sent her manuscript of Anne of Green Gables to like a ridiculous amount of publishers and literally put it in a desk drawer for years before finally sending it out again one last try. And that was a publisher who published her book. And I think it was a publisher in Boston, like not even in Canada. And they wanted to relocate, from what I understand or remember, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think they even wanted to like relocate it to the States somewhere because they thought it would be more like lucrative to their audience. And she stuck by her gun, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at the book and the impact that it's had on so many people and you know, her legacy as an author. And it almost didn't happen. Do you know what I mean? Because so
Mm-hmm.
many people told her that it wasn't right. And I don't know, I've kind of tucked that away in the back of my mind whenever I look at launching something. And I think, you know, like you said, timing is so important. You know, waiting till October was probably the right move for whatever reason. And, you know, trusting your instincts on that is really important, and
Yeah.
timing and all of that. But it's also having that faith that maybe it's a not yet situation, or maybe not quite the right person, you know, not that it's a bad idea or it doesn't have worth. Do you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yes.
no, that's huge.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like listen to yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
listen to your intuition, because honestly, if I didn't, I would have launched early, and
Mm-hmm.
who knows how that would have gone, and who knows which way the pendulum would have swung for that.
Oh yeah.
But in all honesty, like what I've done, what I've created, what I've succeeded in so far
Yeah.
has been eye-opening, and it's taught me so many things. Like the main takeaway is ask.
Yes.
Always ask.
There's no
I've
harm in asking.
Yeah.
Honestly, it takes a lot of vulnerability to even get to that stage where you're putting those words into motion, but there's no harm in asking. Honestly, the worst somebody can say, like, I always ask myself, like, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen right now? They say no. Okay, so then I go and ask
Exactly.
someone else. Like, it's not like this fire and brimstone, you know, everything's blowing up in the background and everything is shot to hell. You know, it's like, no, this is one no, and that's opening up space for yes to come from somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know,
Exactly.
the slamming of the door, the end of the cycle, the end of the chance that you have to make this into something. Like it's not as dire as all that. You know, if you build it up in your brain, and then it's like,
Exactly.
no, simmer down, it's okay. Just nap.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
so true though. Like honestly, I used to be such a perfectionist, so I would always expect a way of finding yes.
Yep.
And I took no and rejection very, very like close to the heart. Hence why I was always very scared to ask unless I knew I was going to get a yes,
Yep.
unless I knew I had all of the evidence to support the yes that I was expecting. But recovering from that and unlearning a lot of those perfectionistic tendencies, you know, like just putting myself out there and just learning from my boyfriend himself, just by him constantly,
Yeah.
you know, prompting me to ask, like, just ask. You never know. Like, we wouldn't have gotten 3 artists if we didn't ask. Like, we wouldn't be at this point of time if you didn't ask, or we wouldn't have been funded in 48 hours if you didn't ask. Like, a lot of that is contributed to the fact that I just asked. And there's so much power in it. And as you say, like, you just never know how it's going to go. Like, I'm glad that I did what I have done.
Yes.
Because it's unworldly, really, because who the hell gave me the audacity to just ask? Who gave me that permission?
I'm so glad you did. And like quite literally, this is almost verbatim the conversation that I was having with my partner in the kitchen yesterday. As I'm launching my website soon, and I'm still trying to figure out what date and pulling everything together for it and everything. And I was like, well, what if it falls flat? What if like nobody's interested in what I have to do and blah, 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 blah. He's like, well, you don't know if you don't try. I'm like, yep, you're right.
Yes.
100% right. You know, and if it bombs or fails spectacularly, so be it. Then I try something else. It's not like it's the end of your goal or your dream. You just find a different way of doing it, right? Like I always used to, I'm a reforming type A, I'm a reforming perfectionist. And I always used to think, well, it has to happen exactly this way. If it doesn't happen this way, then it means that I'm an absolute failure and I suck and everything's terrible and, you know, bombs are going off behind me, everything's falling apart at the seams. But it's not like, you know, all the drama, but it doesn't have to be complicated, you know what I mean? Like it can just be that this is okay, you know? So pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and move on, right? It's amazing how we build it up for ourselves, you know? I know. So I know that you have someone to pick up the airport today, I believe, so I don't want to take up too much of your time because thank you so much. You've been so generous to talk with me about your deck and share everything.
No way.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to share with everybody who's watching either now or I'm going to post this on my stories and to YouTube as well, if that's okay with you. Just where they can find you, because we've got the Kickstarter campaign under Emotional Kaleidoscope, the Introspection Deck, and you also have your Instagram account, Emotional Kaleidoscope. And is there anywhere else that you would like to direct people to find you, or are those the best spots?
They're on Facebook as well. I've got a Emotional Kaleidoscope Facebook group, and that is intended to, I guess, act as the net that pulls everybody that purchased the deck and wants to later on, once they've got the deck, share their experiences, like create open threads about what it is that they saw in artwork or how, you know, that question affected them, etc. So there is a Facebook group as well, Emotional Kaleidoscope, and I think post Kickstarter. So the Kickstarter is running until October 30th. I've got decks available at $50 Canadian. Postage will be added on through the pledge box system because I didn't want to overcharge people for postage, because I was looking at a range of like Kickstarters and everyone was like $35 flat, and I was like, wow, that's really expensive.
Shipping is crazy. Like within Canada especially, I know like I'll send a package to Newfoundland, which is the next province over from Nova Scotia, and it's like $20. I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like we spent 20 months traveling across North America in a 29-foot RV, and when we spent time in the US, I was shocked at how much less expensive shipping was. I was talking to Dominic, my partner, about it, and he's like, yeah, well, it's also a population thing. Like, there's more population density, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, it's so frustrating when it comes to post because it's just very expensive.
But, like, I find that in Australia, it's relatively cheaper as well. So that's why I was shocked when I came here to find out how much it would cost to send even domestically. I was like, what the? No. So I chose to add the postage later on so that I could really define where everybody was to see what it would cost. I'll also have a batch of decks sent directly to Australia from the manufacturer where my sister will fulfill for the Southern Hemisphere, because it is so expensive, Canada to Australia. I couldn't fathom that. So that's why I've got her looking over the Southern Hemisphere, and I'll look over the Northern Hemisphere in terms of fulfillment. So $50 decks, Canadian dollars, and there's a whole lot to choose from. I've got 5 deck packs and 10 deck packs for those that want to stock and sell. And that's pretty worthwhile if you're getting 10 decks at 350 Canadian. That's $35 decks at that. Retailing at 50. So yeah, if you don't catch me on the Kickstarter, I will post it up on my website as well, which is www.eccardgame.com. And I will put the link tree back in my bio on my Instagram once the Kickstarter is done, where you can find all of those places again. But
amazing.
Yeah. Come check out the Kickstarter and see what these cards are all about. I think I might have been a little too vague still, so that people are
No,
like,
I
what
think
is
it's
going
great.
on?
Well, and you also have a bunch of videos that you've included in the Kickstarter,
Yeah.
which I really appreciate, because when I was looking at them earlier, it really gave me a good overview of the deck and the concept and the approach, and also what people's experience was working with it, which I think is hugely helpful and important. You know, that's great.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And I sent out a few prototypes to some people as well. So I believe, sorry, Johnny from Cosmic Wheel
Oh, he's
Tarot has
fabulous.
a
Yeah,
prototype there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And Rachel Jean by the Wandering
The
Moon
woman,
Tarot, she
oh,
has
Rachel's
a prototype.
fabulous. Yeah, yeah, she's
Yeah,
lovely.
she is. She's so beautiful, such a
Yeah,
beautiful woman. And two other life coaches that specialize in trauma and anxiety, both have prototype decks as well.
oh, that's
So
great.
Marissa and Emmy have those decks if you wanted to catch their lives as they
Yeah,
play the deck out as well. So it's out there. It's all on my Instagram page as well. So if you're wanting to find these people through the links, I've got
yeah.
them on my Instagram page. But
Oh, that's so
yes,
fabulous. Yeah, and I'll be like I said, posting this on my feed and in my IGTV and also on YouTube, so there'll be lots of ways for you to replay the video and find out more information if
yeah,
you're just popping in now and haven't had a chance to see all of it. So yeah,
exactly.
great. Well,
This is
thank
such
you
a nice
again for
conversation.
taking the time to chat with me about your deck. This is so fun and wonderful and exciting, and I'm so thrilled for you, and it's an amazing resource and so beautifully done, and I'm so excited for you. This is fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you facilitating this
Oh, my
conversation and just
pleasure.
for creating space and time for me. Like,
Oh,
again, the power of asking. I'm so glad that you said yes. I'm so
of
grateful
course.
for that,
Yeah.
that yes as well.
No, that's so good. I'm so glad that we had a chance to connect. This is wonderful. And it's so nice to see you
Definitely.
kind of in person. That's what in person
Yeah,
equipment now anyway. But yeah,
exactly.
no, lovely. Lovely. I hope you
Exactly.
have a
Exactly.
wonderful rest of the weekend and a great week. And yeah, take care. And thank you again.
Definitely. You too, Jules. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.